If you're thinking about a Toyota RAV4 hybrid, or maybe you're still waiting for your order to arrive, you should go and test drive one of these. It's the Kia Sportage Hybrid, and in a few different ways, it's better than the RAV4. I'm going to tell you all about it in this review and some things you really need to know about it. So make sure you like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have, thanks very much, and let's get to it. I've already done a full detailed review of the Kia Sportage lineup, but that was just covering the petrol, turbo petrol and turbo diesel models in the range. So in that review, you'll find the link in the description below, I found that the diesel ones are the ones you should be going for. So does this turbo petrol hybrid version of the Sportage change my mind? In some ways, yep, it does, but there are some compromises when it comes to this powertrain. Now, the thing you need to know is that it's more expensive than all of the other versions of the Sportage, and it's only front-wheel drive. So those two things could stop you from watching the rest of this video. Please do though, it does help a lot. But I just want to tell you there's only two model grades available as well. The SX model is just under $46,000 before on-road costs, and yeah, that seems pretty pricey for a front-wheel drive hybrid model, but it does come with a bunch of really good standard equipment, including LED lighting around the car, 18-inch alloy wheels. You don't get keyless entry or push button start, it's still a turnkey ignition, but you do get a nice interior finish, and you also get a 12.3-inch touchscreen media system, digital instrumentation, and a few other good features in there like dual zone climate control as well. And then there's this one here, which is the GT line version. So it's the top of the pops, and it is rather expensive. You're looking at about $56,000 before on-road costs, and that is $2.5 grand more than the diesel, which is pretty frugal in its own right. I understand diesel emissions and all that, but it's also $5 grand more than the turbo petrol GT line. So yeah, you're gonna have to really want the hybrid powertrain in order to justify that kind of extra expense. It doesn't get any extra equipment, although it does still come really handsomely equipped for the money, including those LED headlights, daytime running lights, LED front fog lights, LED tail lights. You get keyless entry, you also get push button start, and you get a huge panoramic glass roof as well. On the inside, there's also leather-lined seats, a leather steering wheel. You get a big 12.3-inch driver info screen, heated and cooled, and electrically adjustable front seats as well, and a heated steering wheel too. So you don't really want for much when it comes to the standard equipment, and it certainly does look and feel pretty special on the inside. But hey, I've got some really good alternatives to this car if neither of those variants really ticks the box for you. Let's talk about them now. I've already said that the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid is the benchmark in this segment, and it remains that. I have to say I'm still very impressed by it. It's got a really good size, it's got really good real-world efficiency, and it's starting to show its age. So it is maybe not as compelling as it once was, although it still stands up, in my opinion, as the one to go for if you just want Toyota reliability and the access to the network of dealerships that that brand gives you that no other brand in Australia can. But hey, if you are looking for something that's a bit different to a RAV4 hybrid, how about the Honda CR-V hybrid? Look, it does seem expensive on paper when you compare it to some of the other vehicles out there at nearly 60 grand drive away, but this is nearly 60 grand drive away, and high-spec RAV4s are $60,000 or more drive away as well. So it isn't necessarily that expensive, and it's high-tech feeling, and it's got a beautiful cabin. I like the way it drives, and I reckon it could be a great option for you if you're looking for a hybrid and you want a Honda. And otherwise, Kia itself is about to have an alternative to this car, the Kia EV5, a fully electric mid-size SUV, which will start below 60 grand, hopefully. So it could be a good choice for you as well. And it's going to offer full EV powertrain technology, decent range, probably about 500 Ks of EV driving available to you, and it's going to have all the safety tech as well, so it could be a really good choice too. And there's a Hyundai Tucson hybrid coming as well with the same powertrain as this, a facelifted look, and also some revised interior stuff going on in that facelifted Tucson lineup too. So stay tuned, I'll bring you a full detail of that soon, but let me know which one you would pick in the comments section below. This is the GT line version of the hybrid Sportage. It doesn't look quite as sporty as the petrol or diesel versions of the GT line because it gets smaller 18-inch alloy wheels. There's nothing really differentiating it from the outside apart from those wheels, and one thing at the back I'll show you in a sec. But I just want to call out the fact that these doors open nice and wide to allow easy access to load children into the back, and this is the thing I'm telling you about at the back. HEV badge, so that's hybrid electric vehicle. Now let me show you the boot space. There is a slight penalty to pay when it comes to boot space, or at least practicality. The space itself, it's basically identical to the other versions of the Sportage, and so is the usability, but it's got a space saver spare wheel rather than a full-size spare, which is a bit of a shame, and it could rule it out for some buyers, but otherwise it's still a very practical boot space. As you can see, the number on your screen indicates how much volume you've got to play with. There are some handy additions in here. You've got a light, you've got a 12-volt port, you've got quick release tabs for those rear seats if you need to fold them down after a trip to IKEA or whatever. And I think that it is a pretty handy space, but no shopping bag hooks, which is a little bit of a disappointment, but there are some shopping bag hooks on the inside. Let me show you them in the next section of this video. Being the GT line version of this car, it does have all the wow factor that you can get in a Sportage. And let me tell you, there's a fair bit of wow factor in here. Look, I really like the design of this cabin. I like the fact that you've got these big twin screens that sort of flow together in this curved display. And I think that it is a pretty simple system to use, whether you're using the driver info display, which you control with these little toggles on the steering wheel, or whether you're using the touchscreen media system, which also includes Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but you've still got to plug in your phone, and it has to be an approved cable as well. My cable, for some reason, isn't approved. It must be one of those cheap knockoff ones. Whoops. Now, it does have a USB port down here, USB-C charge port as well, 12-volt down there, a wireless phone charger too. But the big thing about the screen is that you do have controls down below, so not everything has to be done through that touch screen. There's a little touch panel down below. Now, I know touch panels aren't as good as actual physical buttons, but this system is actually pretty good. There's a fan controller down here. You've got dials for the temperature as well. And if you want to jump up to a different setting, so your media system, you can just do that by hitting this little toggle here, which adjusts between temperature and climate control to your media settings. And it does make for quicker interactions with the system, and it turns your knobs and dials here into volume and power and file and tuning knobs. So look, I think that this setup is one of the better setups in today's modern motoring world because, well, it manages to get everything done without everything having to be done through the screen, which is good. Now, you do have some physical buttons down here, your heating and cooling buttons for the seats, and also you've got a heated steering wheel button there as well, drive mode selector, and a rotary dial gear selector as well. Your start button for the car is down here too. You've got these really clever pop-out cup holders, which I think are fantastic and very smart. And underneath here, you've got a covered center console bin too. That's a nice big storage area. You've got bottle holders in the doors as well. These seats, as I've said, they've got the leather accenting. You've also got this micro suede style Alcantara-like trim at the top as well, which does add some wow factor. So does the big glass roof. But like other cars that have dark headliners, I really don't like the blackness that this brings. It makes it feel a little bit more hemmed in, even though that is a nice big glass roof, and you can open that as well. All right, let's see if the back seat feels good too. Okay, it's palatial back here, people. There's heaps of space in the second row of this car. And in case you didn't know, the Kia Sportage that we get in Australia is bigger than the Sportage they get in Europe, for instance. We get the long wheelbase model, which means limousine-like space. As you can see, this seat is set for my driving position at 182 centimeters or 6 foot. Got lots of footroom, lots of knee room, decent amount of headroom as well, even with this big glass roof, and the seat comfort isn't too bad. It's a little bit of a firm seat in the back, but it's not too bad. And if you're going to fit child seats in here, that won't matter to you. There are ISOFIX points in the window seats and top tether points for all 3 positions as well. You've got a flip down armrest here with cup holders, which is nice to see, plus mat pockets on the seat backs, USB ports here as well on the kickbacks of the seats, and you've also got directional air vents too. Plus these little hooks on the back for shopping bags or school bags or whatever it may be. They're quite handy little things. Bottle holders in the doors too. Practicality, tick or thumbs up or one of those things. And if you're one of those posh people who has to wear a suit all the time, you can put your jacket on the back of this seat and stop it from getting wrinkly. Or there's little hooks up here, grab handles, lights, the whole thing. It's really well thought out, this cabin. Under the bonnet of the Kia Sportage Hybrid is a 1.6 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder petrol engine, which combines with an electric motor and a lithium-ion battery pack to give you a pretty decent amount of grunt. 169 kilowatts and 350 newton meters combined is what you get out of this powertrain, and that is a pretty decent chunk of grunt. Now, it's got a 6-speed automatic transmission as standard, not a dual clutch like some of the other hybrid models in the Nero lineup and also some Hyundai models. And it's also got front-wheel drive only, so that might be a deal breaker for you if you really need all-wheel drive. Some of those alternatives I mentioned, or the Subaru Forester Hybrid might also be a pretty good option for you instead. Now, one thing that's different about this engine bay is that there's no 12-volt battery. This car doesn't have one. Instead, it does have a jump start box, but it's not like a regular 12-volt battery. You actually jump start the lithium-ion battery, which is part of the hybrid system. Weird. Can you hear that? There's a very faint hum. Now that's actually from a speaker outside of the car that warns people in the vicinity that you are driving a car and it's EV and it's relatively silent. The only other thing you can really hear outside the car at lower speeds is the tires crunching over whatever surface they're on. But it is something that you do get in a lot of EVs and hybrids, and it does make it a bit safer in built-up pedestrian-centric areas. So it's a good thing to have, I think. And otherwise it is a pretty quiet car to drive, this one. There's not a whole lot of noise to contend with, even on rougher surfaces, even when you're really revving the engine. And look, that transition between the engine and also EV mode is relatively smooth. I think it does a really good job of offering good refinement in that sort of situation where it switches between EV to petrol or uses a combination of the two to try and propel you along. And when it does that, it's pretty quick. Now, I'll just show you one thing. I'm just pulling up to this intersection here, turning left. So I'm in EV mode. If I just put my foot down, you hear that? Yep, that's the problem with front wheel drive and having 350 Newton meters of torque. It does struggle to get that grunt down to the ground a little bit. The traction here is maybe not as good as it could be. So I think that it is a bit of an issue for this car that it doesn't come with all-wheel drive available, especially if you are the sort of person who drives on slippery surfaces or gravel roads a lot. So just keep that in mind, I would say. But it also means that it does encourage you to drive a little bit more sedately, because you don't want to be spinning those front tires all the time, because you'll go through tires pretty quick. Now the tires aren't terrific, they're good enough for this sort of application, but you know, if you did want a little bit more traction at the front axle and a bit more grip available to you, an upgraded set of tires would probably be one way to fix that. So the powertrain itself does a really good job of switching between EV and petrol modes. I'm just driving in eco mode at the moment, so there are a few different drive modes you can choose from. There's sport and another one called smart. So smart should in theory be the smartest one to use. Eco is a bit more focused on dullness to the throttle and stuff like that, and sport makes it actually spin the tires a lot. But hey, we're on our bumpy road test at the moment, and look, the ride comfort here, perfectly fine, I would say. In the versions of the GT line Sportage that have the 19-inch wheels, I find that the ride can be just a little bit bumpier, but this one with the 18-inch wheels and the slightly higher profile tyres, well, it's a bit more comfy. And more generally, the way this car drives is perfectly acceptable for this class. The steering maybe isn't the most fun of any SUV in its segment, but it does a good job. It's predictable enough, and it has a decent amount of weighting to it as well. And the really great thing about it is that while it does have a lane keeping system, you can simply turn it off if you don't like it by holding down a button on the steering wheel rather than having to go through menus on screens to switch that off. And another beautiful thing about the safety system implementation in this car is that it doesn't have a beepy technology to tell you when the speed limit's changed or if you go over the posted speed limit. Instead, it just comes up as a display on the screen, and thank God for that. All right, so another thing that you need to know about hybrid cars is that they do tend to have a different sort of brake pedal feel. So at the top of the pedal, you'll notice that when you start to initially brake, it doesn't really feel like it's biting quite as much as in a conventional engine car. And that's because they have regenerative braking. So that's designed to essentially use the potentially lost kinetic energy to feed a bit of stuff back to the battery pack to keep it charged up as much as possible. And look, I think that it does have decent pedal feel. It's not the best and not the most enjoyable pedal to press down on, but I think for this type of SUV for a family car buyer, it's perfectly acceptable. So let me put it into sport mode and I'll just give it a little bootful. Yeah, that's quick. That's quick enough for most people's needs. In fact, it feels quicker than what you might get in a Toyota RAV4 in terms of immediate acceleration. Because it's got the turbocharged engine and the battery pack working together, it does get along pretty well, and it does respond quickly when you do sort of put your foot down, or in different situations it does feel like it's got a pretty good handle on using battery or petrol power depending on the situation. So it transitions between the two different power sources really well. It's not as clumsy as some of the non-turbocharged dual clutch automatic transmission versions of hybrid technology that we've seen from this Korean mega company in the past. But look, I think that this does basically fit the needs of most people without offending anyone in particular, unless you're maybe a bit of an enthusiast or a lead foot, because the fact that it is front wheel drive only could be a bit of a concern for some people. But I reckon it's going to suit the majority of people really, really well. Hybrids are all about efficiency in theory, so the official combined cycle fuel consumption figure is on your screen now for the Sportage Hybrid, and if you can achieve that across a mix of driving, I reckon you'll be very, very happy. But if you're wondering what I've seen over my testing in this Sportage Hybrid, you'll see it on your screen now, and that is a bit higher than the claimed number, but it's very, very much on par with what I've seen in the past in RAV4 hybrids, so I reckon that it is pretty impressive. Pretty impressive indeed. Just like the other versions of the Kia Sportage, the hybrid version does come with a 5-star ANCAP safety rating based on 2022 testing, so it does have the stuff you would expect when it comes to active safety technology and equipment. Things like autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian and cyclist detection. You've got lane keeping assistance, blind spot monitoring, and rear cross traffic alert as standard. And if you choose the GT line version, you also get a blind spot view monitor system, which will show up a little camera feed on the driver info screen as well. If you choose this one as well, you get a surround view camera system, but the SX grade just makes do with a reversing camera. You get front and rear parking sensors on both grades though, thankfully, and heaps of airbag coverage as well. Dual front, front side, front center, and full length curtain coverage for this vehicle. So it's pretty well covered when it comes to the safety stuff. Yep. Kia Australia offers a 7-year unlimited kilometre warranty for its model range in Australia, including the hybrid models in its lineup. And there's also the battery warranty that you need to pay attention to. You'll see the details for it on your screen. Plus, there's also a 7-year cap price servicing plan for this car. Now, if you're wondering about servicing intervals, you'll see them on your screen. And if you're wondering about servicing pricing, because Kias can be a little bit pricey to service, you'll see the details of the average price over the 7-year cap price plan on your screen now. Also keep in mind though that you do get 7 years of roadside assistance with that plan. And if you decide that, hey, nah, this isn't for me anymore, I'm going to sell it after 2 or 3 years, you can pass those benefits on to the next owner and they'll get a pretty decent amount of warranty, roadside and cap price servicing plan remaining. So that's good for resale value if you're calculating that in your ownership costs. I think Kia has basically nailed it with the Sportage Hybrid, apart from the fact that maybe a couple of extra variants wouldn't go astray, because there is a pretty big price gap between the entry-level SX and the high-spec GT line. What about those people who don't want to spend 60 grand or want to spend a little bit more to have a few extras on the inside? I think that could be a nice addition, a mid-spec model between the two. But tell me what you think in the comments section below. Would you choose the Sportage Hybrid? Would you choose one of those alternatives I mentioned, or something completely different? I'd love to hear from you. And if you have subscribed, thank you so much. It does help me grow the channel and it helps you get more content. So if you haven't, please do, and I'll see you in the next one.